call the other side of the tracks. I grew up on a mill hill. My mom and dad worked at a cotton mill, which was very prominent at that time in Charlotte, North Carolina, which has become quite a financial center. But back then, it was mostly cotton mills. So growing up in that particular atmosphere, I only knew my neighbors. And when I started to school, I met a lot of new folks. I was a very bashful, very shy little boy. And as I grew up and went on to junior high school, I entered there in the seventh grade. Then we only had 1 through 6 and then 7 through 12. But all those people were so big and I knew none of them. They're still very bashful. Then about my sophomore year in high school, I found a dramatics club. And I found out that I didn't have to be bashful anymore. I could be anybody I wanted to be. And I got into dramatics, and that gave me a little bit of confidence. And later in life, I realized that God was training me all the time to deal with people and how to get along. So after graduation, I went to the Marine Corps, and that was altogether different from my other lifestyle. I was everything Marine is fabled to be. I tried a lot of things, and a lot of things didn't work. But earlier in my life, my mom was very much into teaching me the ways of Jesus Christ. And I became a Christian and was baptized at an early age, about 12 years old. But I felt most of my life as being a part-time Christian. I was a Sunday morning Christian. I wasn't doing anything really bad, but I really wasn't living the life that I'd promised God that I would. So after the Marine Corps, I got out and started into sales and was very successful. Still bashful, still afraid of people. But I prayed to God that He'd give me the ability to become a good salesman. And there was something that I found that helped me have the confidence. So when I would approach a place that I'd never been before, and which was most of the places that I called on, I didn't know what was on the other side of the door. So all the way there, I would repeat to myself, I believe I'm always divinely guided. I believe that I will always take the right turn in the road. I believe that God will make a way where there is no way. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. At that time, I felt like I was much closer to God than I had been in my life before that. And hence the sales began to get better. And I got pretty good at it. And after a few years, I thought I was doing it all. And when God decided that I needed to realize who was in control, I had a lot of things happen to me. I first was shot with a shotgun, collapsed a lung. That was the first lesson He gave me. But about 2 years later, I had a heart attack, had 3 bypasses. And while I was in the hospital during that time, I came to the foot of the cross again. And there I met Jesus Christ for real, for the rest of my life. I knew I was not ready to meet my Maker, and I knew that with the heart attack and the surgery coming up the next day that I had a good chance of not surviving. So I prayed probably my most honest to God prayers during that time while I was in the hospital. I asked God to forgive me for all the mistakes that I'd made and forgive me for not following Him the way I promised I would earlier in life. If He saw fit to leave me on earth for a while longer, that I would dedicate the rest of my life to helping Him and serving Him and my fellow man. I fell asleep and woke up in the middle of the night, and the first thing I thought of, which I had memorized many years before, the 23rd Psalm. I could remember every word of it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That made it very personal to me. He was my shepherd, and I wouldn't be afraid. And then I read down where it told us that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then the last part, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I had my answer. God was going to give me another chance, but I didn't know for several years what he wanted me to do. I followed Christ, still waiting for him to show me what he wanted me to do in life. One Sunday morning in Sunday school, a lady came in and she said, would anyone like to help me do a small devotional at a nursing home? And without any part on my part, my hand went up. And my wife said, what in the world are you doing? You can't do that. And my answer even surprised me. I said, I can't, but God can. So I started doing a nursing home ministry in one of the nursing homes. And I used a CD from Andy Griffith to sing hymns. There was 3 or 4 people there. That evolved into moving to a bigger room. We had a piano player, and then we had 50 or 60 people coming. But that first few years was very difficult. Everything was on God's shoulders, not mine. He guided me through that and gave me the words to say. So now we have 6 nursing homes that we minister to, and we have some people helping us. We enlisted some of the students from Columbia International University, a Christian college here in town. They helped a good bit, and some of the folks from our church. But after that experience in the hospital, and I met God, I've been his servant ever since. And I truly believe that God trains us from the time we're born until the time we die to do his will. Sometimes it takes a little while to find out what he wants us to do. And if we'll pay attention and listen to what he says, he'll show us the right way.
Well, Harry, thank you for sharing all that, because it's a beautiful story. And wow, you were shot in the lung. That's a tragedy. There's so many things that kind of brought you steps closer to God as you were walking. So let's take a break, and when we come back, Harry's going to talk about his book, and it's called God Speaks and We Listen. God Speaks, We Listen. So Harry's going to reflect on that. See you when we come back. Okay, we're back with Harry McCoy. Harry, thank you again for that beautiful testimony. So when we spoke previously, you said you mentioned to me that you were a part-time church dweller, and then God came into your life. And how did he reveal himself to you?
Well, I was pretty stubborn, and I wouldn't listen to God. I'm sure that some people have had that problem also. But after the accident where I was shot, then after that I had a heart attack and had those 3 bypass surgeries. And then had gangrene in the gallbladder, had to get that out. So during all that time, God was speaking to me, and sometimes we hear him, but we don't listen. Sometimes we hear what he says and we want to do it our way, and we want him to conform to what we do. I'm afraid that's what I was for so long. I went to church and I looked like a Christian. I acted like a Christian and never really did anything wrong, not bad, but I just was not committed to serving God until those things happened to me. Until he got my attention, I was a part-time Christian. Sunday mornings, I was always there. My tithe was always in, but I was not committed to serving God and my fellow man like I was supposed to. But after we found the nursing home ministry, that kind of fit right in. But at the beginning, it was very scary. I had no problem talking to people, being a salesman, about the products that I had. But to stand up in front of strangers and talk about Jesus, I'd never done that before. I was scared to death. So the first few times was kind of iffy. And I'm surprised that anybody stayed more than 5 minutes. But God had a plan. He had a plan for me, and he has a plan for everybody. all we have to do is just listen when he speaks to us.
Harry, I'm reading through your book, God Speaks, We Listen. And it's beautiful. And there's a part in it, a chapter that says God speaks to us through prayer. And it says, have you ever prayed for someone for weeks or even years, thought you were getting nowhere and wanted to give up? Why did you write that?
Well, nephew that he's passed away now, but he never made a public profession of faith, as far as I know. But God doesn't reveal everything to me, and he might have. But I prayed for that boy for us, my brother's son. I prayed for him for years and years. And at times he would seem to be coming around a little bit. But I'm sure that many people have someone that is really pulling on their heart to bring them to know Jesus Christ. And I tried my very best to bring him. And I never know this side of heaven whether I did or not. But that's the reason for that particular thing.
And I think that there's so many people that they don't know God, and even though some of us are trying to speak to them, never give up. That is the biggest lesson. Even though they may not hear God or be able to feel His presence, we always try to pray for them and try to lead and guide them to Him.
True.
And so in your book it says, uh, are we devoted to Christ when our faith is tested? So in that chapter, you say God sends us trials so we can discover just how strong our faith really is. And the small voice you hear when God's whisper instructions was there again, which means that God was speaking to you. And how did you feel God was speaking to you, Harry?
Well, I think we have different ways of feeling. Sometimes he doesn't speak to us through a burning bush like he did for Moses. He doesn't speak to us always like he spoke to Adam and Eve in the garden. But sometimes it's a whisper. If God spoke to us like that with Moses and Adam and Eve, then it'd be easy to understand. But he doesn't always speak to us like that. Sometimes he does speak in a whisper. And sometimes we just have to feel his presence and know that he's there and listen and be quiet. I find that when I get up early in the morning, before daybreak most of the time, and spend some time just with God and me, just with him and his presence, I pray to begin with that God will take all the distractions out of my mind. He'll take everything away that the devil has tried to put in there during the day and during the night. I pray that he'll take all that out and leave only his voice for me to hear. And sometimes he speaks to me, and I realize that there was something that had bothered me for a long time that I now have a solution to. And sometimes it's with a person that I run into on the street. Sometimes I know them, and sometimes it's a stranger. But God speaks to us in several different ways. He has different ways to speak to individuals. Sometimes his voice is felt, and other times it's very audible. He speaks through scriptures as we read the Bible, and through dreams, and sometimes even visits by angels. But he has a way of communicating with us, and only you know that way that works for you.
Harry, in your book, I'm just reflecting back in your book because it's beautiful. You say, God is surely beyond us, yet he is involved in our lives each day. And you just reflected on that. God is so vast that the universe cannot contain him. Yet he bends down and takes our hand when we need him most. In that relationship we have with him, the Lord God shares his strength with us when we are weary and bears us up when we are downtrodden. He comforts in times of trouble and distress. Oftentimes when things are happening in our lives, we forget God. We forget him. And we just concentrate on that problem. And we don't hear him speaking to us very subtly. Maybe he's speaking, maybe someone else is speaking through for him. In these times of anxiety, there's a lot of people that are just they're watching the news, they're hunkering down into it, and they're keeping the voice of God away. What do you think about that?
I think we're all guilty of that. And that's what I talk about when I say I was a Sunday morning Christian. I played the part. I was playing church. A lot of people play church. But if you get serious about it, God will get serious with you. If you'll quit trying to get him to conform to your wishes and you conform to his wishes, then things will get better. And God will get you through these difficult times. We tend to learn better from experience rather than just reading something. All the troubles and all the things that we go through, they have a purpose. God wouldn't put us through these without it. Everything that we face has a reason. Nothing happens by accident when God's in control. I think the most difficult thing that I had to face was made possible through God. His amazing grace is so amazing. I knew that he sent his son, Jesus, to earth to die for my sins and the sins of the world. But when it comes home and one of your loved ones is facing death, then you depend entirely on God's grace. My daughter, my oldest daughter, developed brain cancer, a brain tumor. And within a year, she went to her reward in heaven. Without God in my life, I couldn't have bared that. I don't know if anybody has lost a child, but that's the most difficult thing that I had to face in my lifetime. But God made it bearable. He got me through it. I still have misty moments when I think about my daughter because I loved her so dearly, but I know that she was a child of God, and I know that I'll see her someday again. She won't have a brain tumor. She'll be perfect in every way because God has said he'll make all things new, and that includes us and our problems, our difficulties in life. They'll all be wiped away when Jesus comes.
That's a beautiful testimony, Harry. Thank you for sharing all that with us. And any last thoughts you'd like to share with anybody before we conclude?
Well, I'd just like to say that God puts us through difficult times to teach us things. If you'll just remember, the things that we remember most are the things that we had difficulty with. We remember those things because they taught us how to deal with certain situations, how to depend on God for everything. If we put our trust in Jesus Christ and walk the way that he's designed for us, then he'll bring us to heaven's gate. My son's a pilot, and we used to sit out back in the woods and look at the planes and wonder how they fly. And he became a pilot, and he flew, and I was able to go with him. He flew with United for a while, and I was able to go with him for a week on all of his trips. One morning we woke up in Savannah, and the fog was so thick that you could hardly see the ornament on the automobile that we took to the airport. I said, son, how long do you think we'll be delayed today? And he said, we'll get off on time. I said, with all this fog? He said, sure, I'll show you how. So where we got there, he went by and looked at the plane and looked it over and did his checklist. He said, come on, I'll show you. And I went up in the flight deck and he said, you see that white line out there? I said, yeah. He said, all you have to do is put the wheel on that white line, open the throttle, and when you get fast enough, you'll take off. Just stay on that line. And before you know it, you'll come out of the clouds and the sun will be shining. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I thought maybe that's a good way for we Christians to do. God sent Jesus Christ. He's that white line in the road. He's the one that we need to follow. And he's the one that'll take us out of the darkness into the light. Put your trust and faith in Jesus Christ. He'll never, ever let you down.
What a beautiful testimony. Thank you so much, Harry, for joining me here today. And I know there's going to be a lot of hearts and minds that are going to just love hearing this. And you know, my prayer is that, you know, hearts will be open to him. And I appreciate what you did. So Harry wrote this book, as I've been reading out of it, this segment, God Speaks, you know, we listen. And he's giving 5 books away. So I'm going to put the his website up at the bottom, and you can go to his website, and under contact us, just the first 5 people that send him, he will send you this book for free. And thank you, Harry, for that very generous offer. And I thank you again, and thank you, and goodbye to everyone.
God bless. We'll see you soon.
Bye
Bye
bye.
now.
Bye
Bye
bye.
now.